we need to talk about what happened today. Wolfsburg visiting Bayern Munich, and you predicted that Bayern would win that game 5-1. I said you might be wrong, and I didn't say you would be wrong because it wouldn't be a 5-1 thrashing. I said it's probably too conservative of a prediction, and 8-1 is the final result. I haven't seen a lifeless performance like that by any team visiting Bayern Munich, especially in the second half, since the old Hamburger SV that got eventually relegated from the first division, Stefan. It was absolutely catastrophic how Wolfsburg presented itself in the Allianz Arena. And I think if you're the management team there and the people that are investing money regularly in the club, and if you're the Volkswagen management, if you put the equivalent out there, that's a total crash, isn't it? And if you Volkswagen, if I was a manager at Volkswagen and I'm looking at the cuts that you have to make at the moment because of the economic downturn and car sales and tariffs and all that sort of stuff, I'd be really wondering what's the point.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I had to swap my mouse over there because the one I was using ran out of battery. Yeah, it was a bizarre game. We kind of joked in the previous show, as you said, that it was going to be a thumping, and it was the case. I actually feel like my prediction was almost spot on, because I said that Wolfsburg were going to thump them, and I said there's a good chance that Pacinovic, the young striker who wrote my newsletter on Friday, would score, and that's exactly what he did 13 minutes into the game. I thought, yeah, I mean, look, it was a nonsense. First things first, it was an absolute nonsense. And it felt like a game that maybe Wolfsburg were a little bit better in the first half. Obviously, they go ahead, Bayern go ahead from a Fischer own goal 5 minutes into the match, which I actually felt like maybe Olise had kind of nudged him or pushed him a little bit, and I'm quite surprised he didn't put up much of a fuss about that, or didn't kind of complain and maybe try and get VR to kind of call it back. He just kind of resigned himself to scoring that own goal, and at that point, it felt like Wolfsburg had already resigned themselves to losing this game. But they actually put up something of a spirited kind of response. Like I said, Pacinovic comes on and doesn't come on, so he picks up a really lovely kind of through ball from Meyer, 8 minutes after that, and scores a great goal. And then Wolfsburg actually have a good kind of spell of creating chances, and I thought that was quite interesting because, they really had a proper gung-ho approach to this game. I was kind of chatting to our subscribers during the game about it, actually, and they were more or less going man for man with that kind of Bayern defence, where you had kind of Wimmer, Meyer and Eriksson alongside Pacinovic, kind of almost man for man marking the Bayern defence, presumably in the hope of breaking up Bayern's build-up strategy. They didn't want to let Bayern kind of pin them back and just play that usual kind of passing game on the edge of the Wolfsburg box. And it kind of led to this kind of box-to-box game, which at times suited Wolfsburg. And, even though Fischer scored that own goal, I really noticed, especially in the first half, he was flying up that wing almost as a left wing back, almost a left winger at times, because Wimmer was cutting inside and Arnold was kind of filling in at left back at times. So, Wolfsburg were really going for this game. They really were kind of thought, well, we might as well have a go at this. But it then kind of fell apart in the second half. Obviously, Diaz scores in the 30th minute. And then, Bayern are ahead at half time. But it was really in the second half that Bayern just kind of ran away with it. And specifically through Michael Olise, who was just incredible in this match. And I think the goal he scores is Arjen Robben-esque in the sense that he just kind of cuts inside and tucks into the back post. And at times he makes it look so easy. And I think from a Wolfsburg point of view, I'd be quite frustrated because it was maybe the third or fourth time that he's had Patrick Wimmer marking him. And because Patrick Wimmer is just another winger, he kind of puts in a half-arsed attempt to kind of take the ball off him. And I just don't think you can be that lackadaisical with a player like Mike Oliseh. You almost need like a second fullback on that wing to kind of keep an eye on him, or allow your fullback to kind of push right up on him and keep an eye on him, because he really thrives in that half space, in the sense that, he doesn't really, I mean, don't get me wrong, he absolutely does take on fullbacks, and he took on Fischer to score the fourth goal, which has gone down as a Jens own goal, but it was more or less Luis Diaz tapping it in. He skins the defender there, but for that one, you can see that he's actively trying to go one-on-one with the other winger so he can cut inside beyond him, and then that gives him space to hit these shots, which he scores tremendously well. And they scored, two goals in 3 minutes through Oliseh, and, that's the game done and dusted, which I thought was really impressive. So it was a pretty straightforward match, Manu, from a Bayern point of view. I thought Wolfsburg tried to do something interesting from tactically, but equally, perhaps quite naive, I would say, maybe, Manu, from the interim head coach.
Yeah, you can't play like that with the quality of the squad that you have. And then, of course, there is something almost Pep Guardiola-esque about the way Bayern Munich play football at the moment, isn't there? That they don't let up when they can run up the score. The way that they are playing at the moment, especially after the break when they haven't been, the legs were up in the brief holiday. Joshua Kimmich isn't playing in this game, so the Bischoff comes on, and I thought had a really, really strong game. And it's just that amount of quality that they have to just completely steamroll their opponents at the moment, right? And I again, this is a game where they were so dominant in every single aspect. But the hallmark of Vincent Company football at the moment is that they not only dominate the stats that traditional strong teams dominate, like, passing, possession. Once again, they outran their opponent. And not by a little, by a full 3 kilometers, right? And in fact, they played the last few minutes with a man down because I think Stanisic had to come off, and they already had all their substitutions. And so they just, they played out the game. There was a brief moment where Company just held up his fingers where he said 4-4-1, right? It's like, basically it doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't really matter what's going on here. We can just play and do whatever we want. And also really noticeable, he brought on the kids. Bischoff starts. Mr. Mike comes off the bench. Felipe Chavez comes off the bench, who's a young German-Peruvian attacking midfielder. We actually featured him on Transfermarkt last year. There's an article on him on the site. And so, he's playing the kids. He's doing everything that needs to be done to develop the football club. And the players seem to love it. I mean, that's the other thing that really stood out to me. I think it was at 5-1. At 5-1 when Harry Kane, that goal that he scores, he makes it look so easy. But when you look at it in the slow motion, he hits the very top corner of the goal in such a fashion that it hits the post once, twice, and then goes in. Right? It's a perfect shot, and I think that is really what, as bad as Wolfsburg were, I don't want to take away from this Bayern Munich performance, because it was perfect, with the exception of maybe the Pezinovic goal, right? I think that is maybe, if you're looking for the hair in the soup, that's the one that they just can't keep clean sheets at the moment. But other than that, I mean, they're just playing perfect football, and they're doing it with a freedom and confidence that you haven't seen in a long time. And Company is also checking the box by continuing to blood young talented players, giving them the playing time, giving them the moments in games like this where they can come on the pitch and get their performances in. I think that if I was a Bayern fan, I'd be extremely happy with how things are at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is, as you said, they did kind of give Wolfsburg a fair number of chances. Like, Pezinovic could have scored a second just before, I think, Oliseh made it 3-1. And, they did kind of pepper that Bayern box with chances because they were basically going man for man in the Bayern half. It meant whenever they did kind of manage to break the Bayern press, then they did a decent job of kind of creating chances. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a perfectly solid performance from Bayern, and absolutely he should be playing the young players when it gets to this point because there's no reason why these guys shouldn't be coming on when they're 6-7-1 up. I just think it's a fascinating kind of you're right, it's a fascinating kind of situation we've got here where obviously people from outside of German football, people who don't follow German football will see this result and think, well, this is just typical of the Bundesliga, but it's not typical of the Bundesliga. It is quite something quite special. It's definitely happening at Bayern. Things are ticking perfectly, clicking into place. The team has a tremendous kind of chemistry about it. And yes, they're absolutely sleepwalking to the league title, but that's only because they're clearly one of the best teams in the world right now. And I mean, I'm struggling to think when the last time a Bayern team was this good in an attacking sense because it's not just Harry Kane. It's obviously Michael Olise was outstanding in this game, but so was Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz was tremendous in this game, and you had Bischoff and Pavlovic in the middle of the park, and they could more or less just kind of sit in defence. They had, and then you obviously you had Stanisic on the left, a left back, and you had Leimer at right back, and Leimer is very attacking. Don't get me wrong, but those three world-class forward players were more than enough to kind of put Wolfsburg to the sword. And I think that's the thing that's really interesting for Bayern, not just from a Bundesliga point of view, but also from from a Champions League point of view, in the sense that if you're a team trying to beat this Bayern team, it's not just one player you have to worry about. It's potentially 2, 3, and then maybe potentially 4, when Musiala comes back, world-class attacking players. I know Leonard Carl played today. I'd actually he was a bit quiet, weirdly enough, despite having Bayern scoring 8 goals. But you can clearly see that Vincent Company sat down pre-season or when he started and thought, well, our strengths are in attack, so we're just going to obviously prioritise that. And it's working wonders for them, to be honest with you. So, Wolfsburg, unsurprisingly, weren't able to kind of make much out of that. I think they, as a club, might have to start thinking about who they're bringing in as a head coach full time because, I know Daniel Boyer had a few decent results when he first came in, but it's this and the Freiburg result prior to Christmas really makes me think that he's not kind of getting anything out of this because it's so frustrating because on an individual level, there's so many good players in that Wolfsburg team, but it's just not kind of working. But before we move on from this matter, I've got one stat for you, which is a little concerning. Poor Maxi Arnold has once again lost to Bayern. And I was just checking there. He hasn't won a league game against Bayern since 2014-2015. And his record against them now is 2 wins, 2 draws, and 22 defeats as a Wolfsburg player. So, that's... poor one out for poor Maxi Arnold, who perhaps is getting a little too used to losing to Bayern.
I mean, that's what you get when you decide for a lifelong career in Wolfsburg. I mean, you mentioned the situation there. Kilian Fischer, the wing back, said the result in itself is absolutely embarrassing. And if you play like that, which is simply not good enough to survive in the Bundesliga. And I think that's a really good way of wrapping up this part of the podcast because I don't think I have much else to add to that analysis. The way things are in Wolfsburg at the moment, it's just not good enough for the Bundesliga.